The sharp crack of a whip split the morning air as Abigail Evans struggled against the rough hands that dragged her through the dusty streets of Cottonwood Springs, her once fine blue dress now torn and filthy. The year was 1875, and the West was still wild, unforgiving to those who broke its unwritten laws and even less forgiving to women accused of theft. "I didn't steal anything," Abigail cried out, her voice hoarse from screaming the same words for the past hour. Her long auburn hair, usually pinned neatly atop her head, had come loose, tangling around her face as she was pulled forward by two burly men, the Hargrove brothers, local ranch hands known for their cruelty. "Save your breath, woman," the elder Hargrove spat. "Mr. Sullivan saw you clear as day, taking that money from his register." Tears streaked down Abigail's dust-covered face. She had arrived in Cottonwood Springs just 3 days ago, hoping to start anew after her father's passing left her with nothing but debts in Boston. 23 years old and alone in the world, she had secured a position as a schoolteacher, only to be accused of theft before her first day of work. The growing crowd that followed the spectacle jeered and called out insults. Public humiliation was a favored punishment in these parts, especially for outsiders. The men continued to drag her through the main street, her knees and palms scraping against the rough ground whenever she stumbled. As they neared the edge of town, where the neat wooden buildings gave way to scattered homesteads, a deep voice cut through the commotion. "That's enough." The crowd fell silent as a tall figure stepped forward. Quincy Westbrook stood with his thumbs hooked in his belt, his weathered face partially shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. At 30, he was already a respected man in the territory, a skilled carpenter who had built half the town with his own hands and a former Texas Ranger who didn't need to raise his voice to command attention. "The lady says she didn't take it," Quincy continued, his eyes narrowed at the Hargrove brothers. "I reckon we ought to hear her out before continuing this display." "This ain't your business, Westbrook," the younger Hargrove brother challenged, though he had already loosened his grip on Abigail's arm. Quincy's hand moved casually to rest on the revolver at his hip. "I'm making it my business," the crowd murmured. No one wanted to cross Quincy Westbrook, not even the Hargroves. They released Abigail, who collapsed to her knees in the dirt, struggling to catch her breath. Quincy knelt beside her, offering a clean handkerchief. "You all right, miss?" Abigail looked up at him with wary green eyes. "Why would you help me? You don't know me." "I know enough," he replied quietly. Sullivan's accused 3 other newcomers of stealing from him in the past year, never could prove it, but the accusations were enough to run them out of town. He stood and addressed the crowd. "If the lady stole something, there'll be a proper investigation. Sheriff Mason can handle it. This isn't how we do things in Cottonwood Springs." "She's probably just another big city girl looking for easy pickings," someone called out. Quincy's expression hardened. "They dragged her through dust," he said, voice carrying across the now silent street. "I won't stand for it. From now on, you'll walk on boards I built, Miss Evans, with your head held high." The crowd began to disperse, mumbling their disapproval but unwilling to challenge Quincy further. He helped Abigail to her feet. "I can take you to the doctor to tend those scrapes," he offered. Abigail shook her head, trying to gather what remained of her dignity. "Thank you, Mr. Westbrook, but I should return to my lodgings. The widow Gray has been kind enough to take me in until I receive my first wages." "As you wish." He tipped his hat. "But if you'll permit me, I'd like to escort you. Some folks might still have notions about continuing what the Hargroves started." As they walked toward the small boarding house at the edge of town, Abigail became acutely aware of her disheveled appearance. "How did you know my name, small town?" Quincy replied with a hint of a smile. "Word travels fast when a new schoolteacher arrives. Been needing one since old Mrs. Jenkins passed last winter. I haven't even started teaching yet, and already my reputation is ruined," Abigail said bitterly. Quincy stopped walking and turned to her. "Miss Evans, out here reputation is what you make of it." Show these people who you really are, and they'll forget today ever happened. His confidence was both reassuring and infuriating. How could he possibly understand her position? Easy for you to say, Mr. Westbrook. You're established here. I'm just a woman accused of theft on her first week in town. Call me Quincy, he said. And I wasn't always established. I came here with nothing but my tools and the clothes on my back 5 years ago, had to earn every bit of respect I've got. They reached the Widow Gray's boarding house, a modest 2-story structure with a small porch. Before Abigail could thank him again, the door flew open, and an elderly woman with kind eyes and a worried expression hurried out. "Oh, my dear child, I heard what happened. Come in, come in. I've drawn a bath for you." Abigail turned to Quincy. "Thank you for your assistance, Mr. Quincy." He touched the brim of his hat. "I meant what I said about walking on boards I built, Miss Evans. Don't let them drive you away." As Abigail soaked in the tepid bathwater that evening, she contemplated leaving town. She could try another settlement, perhaps further west. But something about Quincy Westbrook's words had struck a chord. She had come too far to be run off by false accusations. The next morning, Abigail dressed in her best remaining outfit, a simple dark green dress with a white collar, and made her way to the small schoolhouse. She expected to find it empty, assumed parents would keep their children away from the thief. But to her surprise, 15 children of various ages sat at desks, looking at her expectantly. She swallowed her nervousness and introduced herself. By mid-morning, she had almost forgotten yesterday's ordeal, engrossed in teaching arithmetic to the younger students while the older ones worked on composition. At lunchtime, a knock at the schoolhouse door revealed Quincy, holding a small package wrapped in brown paper. "Pardon the interruption," he said, nodding respectfully to the children. "Miss Evans, I thought you might need this." Abigail unwrapped the package to find a small brass bell. "For calling the children in from recess," Quincy explained, "made the clapper myself." "Thank you," she said, surprised by the thoughtful gift. "It's perfect." As days turned into weeks, Abigail established herself as Cottonwood Springs' teacher. The accusations faded as parents saw how their children flourished under her guidance. She occasionally crossed paths with Quincy, who would tip his hat and inquire about her welfare, but their interactions remained brief and formal. Until one stormy afternoon in late May, when a thunderstorm struck with little warning. The schoolhouse roof, old and poorly maintained, began to leak in several places. As Abigail scrambled to move books and papers away from the water, the door burst open, revealing Quincy, soaking wet but determined. "Saw the storm coming," he explained, already moving to place buckets under the worst leaks. "Figured the roof wouldn't hold." Together, they saved most of the books and papers before the downpour subsided. As the children were dismissed early, Quincy surveyed the damage. "This won't do," he said, more to himself than to Abigail. "I'll speak to the town council about repairs." "The council already denied my request," Abigail said, wringing water from her sleeve. "They said there weren't enough funds this year." Quincy's jaw tightened. "Then I'll do it myself." These children deserve better than a leaky roof over their heads while they learn. Abigail was touched by his determination. "I couldn't ask you to do that. You're not asking, I'm offering." He looked around the schoolroom. "I built this place when I first came to town, wasn't my best work. Been meaning to fix it up proper." Over the next few weeks, Quincy arrived at the schoolhouse each day after classes ended, working until dusk to repair the roof and strengthen the structure. Abigail often stayed late, grading papers while he worked, and gradually, their conversations extended beyond pleasantries. She learned that he had fought briefly in the closing days of the Civil War as a very young man, then wandered through Texas before finding his calling as a carpenter. He had come to Cottonwood Springs seeking a fresh start, much like her. In turn, she told him about growing up in Boston, her father's work as a clerk, and how his death had left her with no choice but to seek employment far from home. One evening, as Quincy was finishing the last section of the roof, Abigail brought him a cup of coffee. "Why did you really help me that day?" she asked, having wondered for weeks. "The truth, please." Quincy paused, setting down his hammer. "I've seen what happens when good people stand by and let cruelty happen. Didn't sit right with me." "Is that all?" He met her gaze. "No, there was something about you, the way you kept your dignity even as they dragged you through the dirt, reminded me that courage comes in many forms." The air between them seemed to shift, charged with unspoken feelings. But before either could speak further, they were interrupted by Sheriff Mason, who approached the schoolhouse with purposeful strides. "Miss Evans, Mr. Westbrook," he greeted them. "I've got news you'll both want to hear." Caught young Billy Sullivan with his hand in his father's till this afternoon. Boy confessed he's been skimming for months. His father's been blaming customers and employees to cover the shortages. Abigail felt a wave of vindication wash over her. "So I was never—" "No, madam. You were innocent all along. Mr. Sullivan will be making a public apology tomorrow at the town meeting." The sheriff tipped his hat and departed, leaving Abigail and Quincy alone again. "Justice comes eventually," Quincy said softly. "Even out here." Abigail found herself fighting tears. "Thank you for believing in me when no one else would." That night marked a turning point. The town meeting the next day brought Sullivan's grudging apology and a complete restoration of Abigail's standing in the community. But more importantly, it changed something between her and Quincy. He began calling at the Widow Gray's boarding house on Sunday afternoons, inviting Abigail for walks along the creek that ran near town. They spoke of books they had read, dreams they still harbored, and gradually, the barriers between them fell away. By midsummer, it was common knowledge in Cottonwood Springs that Quincy Westbrook was courting the schoolteacher. Some approved, seeing it as a natural match between two respected members of the community. Others whispered that she had somehow ensnared him, that a refined Eastern woman had no business with a frontier carpenter. Abigail paid little mind to the gossip. For the first time since arriving in the West, she felt she belonged somewhere not just to the town or the school, but to the moments she shared with Quincy. One warm July evening, as they sat on a blanket watching fireflies dance over the meadow outside town, Quincy took her hand. "I've been thinking," he said, his usual confidence giving way to nervous energy. "The school term ends next month." "Yes," Abigail replied, uncertain where he was leading. "Some folks might expect you to return east for the break, or seek a position in a larger town." She turned to face him fully. "Is that what you think I should do?" "No," he said quickly. "No, I hope you might consider staying, permanently." Abigail's heart quickened. "Are you asking me something, Quincy Westbrook?" He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small wooden box, intricately carved with delicate flowers. "Been working on this for weeks," he admitted, opening it to reveal a simple gold band set with a small pearl. "I'm asking if you do me the honor of becoming my wife, Abigail Evans." Tears sprang to her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." Their engagement announcement caused a stir in Cottonwood Springs, but mostly of the celebratory kind. The Widow Gray insisted on hosting a small engagement party, where even the Hargrove brothers made awkward appearances to offer congratulations. As summer turned to fall, wedding preparations occupied what little free time Abigail had between teaching duties. Quincy, meanwhile, threw himself into a secret project he refused to discuss, disappearing for hours each day after finishing his regular work. "You'll see soon enough," was all he would say when she questioned him. 2 weeks before their planned November wedding, Quincy finally revealed his surprise. Blindfolding Abigail, he led her on horseback to a location just outside town. "Ready?" he asked, his voice betraying his excitement as he removed the blindfold. Before her stood a house not large but beautifully crafted, with a wide porch wrapping around the front and one side. The clapboard siding was painted a soft white, with green shutters framing each window. "Quincy," she breathed, unable to find more words. "Every board cut, shaped, and placed by my hands," he said proudly. "For you, for us." Abigail walked up the 3 steps to the porch, running her fingers along the smooth railing. "When did you find time to do all this?" "Been working on it since May," he admitted. "Started right after the schoolhouse repairs. Wanted to have it ready before winter." He led her inside, where simple but elegant furniture awaited a table and chairs in the dining area, a comfortable settee before the stone fireplace, and bookshelves built into the walls. "The bedroom still needs a proper bed," he explained, showing her the empty room at the back of the house. "Thought you might want to choose that together." Abigail turned to him, overwhelmed by the magnitude of his gift. "It's perfect, all of it." Their wedding day dawned clear and cool. The entire town seemed to turn out for the ceremony, held in the newly reinforced schoolhouse. Abigail wore a dress of ivory satin that the widow Gray had helped her make, with lace at the collar and cuffs that had been sent by her one remaining aunt in Boston. As they exchanged vows, Abigail remembered that first day being dragged through the dust, humiliated and alone. How far she had come since then, finding not just security but love in this remote corner of the West. After the ceremony, as guests gathered for the celebration at the town hall, Quincy led her outside for a moment alone. "Happy, Mrs. Westbrook?" he asked, his arms encircling her waist. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied honestly. "When I came here, I was just looking for a position, a way to support myself. I never expected to find a home, or you." His kiss was tender, a promise of the life they would build together. Their first year of marriage brought both joy and challenges. Abigail continued teaching, while Quincy's reputation as a master carpenter spread throughout the territory, bringing commissions from neighboring towns. They weathered their first major argument over whether to keep chickens, which Abigail insisted would ruin her small garden. Their first Christmas, celebrated with gifts both had secretly crafted for weeks, and the first time they nursed each other through illness, when influenza swept through town that winter. By their first anniversary, they had settled into a rhythm of shared life that suited them both. The house had expanded slightly, with Quincy adding a study where Abigail could prepare lessons and read in peace. Their garden flourished under her care, and yes, a small chicken coop now stood at a compromised distance from her vegetables. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Abigail rested her head against Quincy's shoulder. "Do you ever wonder how differently things might have turned out?" she asked. "If you hadn't stepped in that day," he was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes, but I think we would have found each other anyway. Some things are just meant to be." She smiled at his unusual sentimentality. "The great practical Quincy Westbrook talking about destiny?" "Well," he chuckled, "maybe not destiny, but I know I'd have noticed you eventually. Prettiest, smartest woman in the territory, how could I not?" Their second year brought deeper changes. Abigail discovered she was expecting a child in the early spring, news that filled Quincy with both joy and terror. He immediately began planning an addition to the house and crafting a cradle from the finest cherry wood he could obtain. "It needs to be perfect," he insisted, working late into the night on the delicate spindles. "The baby won't know the difference," Abigail teased, her hand resting on her growing abdomen. "Maybe not, but I will." As Abigail's pregnancy progressed, the town rallied around them. The school board hired an assistant teacher to help when Abigail needed rest. The widow Gray knitted seemingly endless blankets and tiny garments. Even the Hargrove brothers contributed, delivering a rocking chair they had purchased from a passing trader. "Figured you might need it," the elder Hargrove mumbled awkwardly when they presented it. "For when the little one comes." Their daughter, Clara Rose Westbrook, arrived on a crisp October morning in 1877, with the widow Gray serving as midwife and Quincy pacing anxiously outside the bedroom door. When finally allowed to enter, he approached the bed with reverence, gazing down at the tiny face of his daughter nestled in Abigail's arms. "She's perfect," he whispered, tears unashamedly tracking down his weathered cheeks. "She is," Abigail agreed, exhausted but radiant. "And she has your eyes." Life with an infant changed their routines entirely. Abigail took a longer break from teaching than originally planned, finding that caring for Clara occupied more time and energy than she had anticipated. Quincy adjusted his work schedule, often bringing smaller projects home so he could be nearby when needed. By the time Clara was walking, Cottonwood Springs had grown substantially. The railroad had finally reached the area, bringing new settlers, businesses, and opportunities. Quincy's services were in higher demand than ever, as newcomers wanted homes built and established residents sought expansions and improvements. The town council approached him about designing a proper town hall, one that would reflect Cottonwood Springs' growing prosperity and ambitions. It was the largest commission he had ever received, and he threw himself into the project with characteristic dedication. Meanwhile, Abigail returned to teaching part-time, bringing Clara with her to the schoolhouse 3 days a week. The arrangement worked well, with older students delighting in entertaining the toddler during breaks while Abigail taught lessons. One afternoon, as Quincy was presenting his town hall plans to the council, a commotion erupted outside. Shouts of fire sent everyone rushing into the street. Black smoke billowed from the direction of the schoolhouse. Quincy's heart stopped. Abigail and Clara were there today. He ran faster than he ever had, praying silently with each stride. As he rounded the corner onto School Street, he saw with horror that the building was indeed ablaze, flames licking up the sides of the wooden structure he had so carefully repaired years before. A crowd had gathered, and the town's volunteer fire brigade was already attempting to control the flames with a bucket line from the nearby well. Quincy scanned the faces desperately, searching for Abigail and their daughter. "Where are they?" he demanded, grabbing the arm of a bystander. "My wife and child, were they inside?" Before the man could answer, a figure emerged from the crowd. Abigail, her face smudged with soot, holding Clara tightly against her chest. The child was crying but appeared unharmed. Quincy rushed to them, gathering both in his arms. "Thank God," he breathed. "I thought we're all right," Abigail assured him, though her voice shook. "We were out back when it started. One of the older boys came to warn us." "All the children?" he asked, looking back at the burning building. "All safe," she confirmed. But the schoolhouse, everything inside, they watched as the fire brigade fought valiantly. But it was clear the structure couldn't be saved. By nightfall, only charred remnants remained of the building where they had been married, where Abigail had taught dozens of children, where their own love story had deepened as Quincy repaired the roof years ago. In the days that followed, an investigation revealed that the fire had started accidentally. A lantern knocked over by a student had ignited papers and quickly spread. No one was to blame, but the loss was still devastating for the community. The town council met in emergency session, with Quincy and Abigail in attendance. The question before them was simple but daunting: how to provide education for the children while deciding whether and how to rebuild the schoolhouse. "We'll need temporary quarters," the mayor said. "Somewhere large enough to accommodate all the students." "The church," someone suggested. "Used for too many other functions," another council member argued. "We need something dedicated to the school." Quincy stood. "I have a proposal. The town hall plans can wait. I'll design and build a new schoolhouse first, larger, safer, with proper consideration for light and ventilation, something this town can be proud of for generations." The council members exchanged glances. "And in the meantime?" the mayor asked. "In the meantime," Abigail spoke up, "we can use our home. The main room is large enough for the younger children in the mornings and the older ones in the afternoons. It won't be ideal, but it will serve until the new schoolhouse is completed." Her offer surprised even Quincy, who looked at her with new admiration. Their home was their sanctuary, their private world. Opening it to the town's children would disrupt everything. "Are you certain?" he asked her quietly. "Yes," she replied without hesitation. "Education can't wait." And so their home became Cottonwood Springs' temporary schoolhouse. Each morning, Abigail arranged tables and chairs in their main room, while Quincy built additional desks and benches to accommodate the students. Clara, now nearly 2, delighted in the constant company, appointing herself unofficial assistant teacher. Construction on the new schoolhouse began immediately, with Quincy supervising every detail. He hired additional workers to speed the process, determined to complete the building before winter made construction impossible. The community rallied, with men volunteering labor on weekends and women organizing fundraisers to purchase new books and supplies. Even Sullivan, who had falsely accused Abigail years before, contributed generously, perhaps still seeking atonement for his earlier wrong. By late November, the new schoolhouse stood complete, a handsome red brick building with large windows, a bell tower, and a covered entryway to protect students from inclement weather. Inside, the main classroom was spacious and bright, with a smaller room adjoining it for advanced students. Quincy had incorporated special touches throughout. A built-in bookcase with glass doors to protect precious volumes, a raised platform for the teacher's desk that provided better visibility of the classroom, and most touching to Abigail, a small side room furnished as a nursery where Clara could nap during school hours. The dedication ceremony was held on a bright December morning. Nearly everyone in town attended as the mayor cut a ribbon stretched across the doorway and invited the community inside to tour the new facility. "This building," he announced, "represents the best of Cottonwood Springs, our commitment to education, our resilience in the face of setbacks, and our ability to come together for the common good. We owe special thanks to Quincy and Abigail Westbrook, who have given so much to make this day possible." Abigail, standing beside Quincy with Clara in her arms, felt tears spring to her eyes. How far they had all come since that terrible day when she was dragged through the dust. Now she stood respected, loved, a mother and teacher, integral to the community that had once nearly rejected her. "Are you crying?" Quincy whispered, slipping an arm around her waist. "Happy tears," she assured him. "I was just thinking about what you said to me that first day." "About walking on boards you built," he smiled, remembering. "And now you're standing in an entire building I built for you." "For the children," she corrected gently. "For the future," he compromised, watching as Clara wriggled down from Abigail's arms to explore the new space, her small boots making satisfied thumps on the wooden floor. As years passed, Cottonwood Springs continued to grow and prosper. The railroad brought increased commerce and new residents, transforming the once small settlement into a respectable town. Quincy eventually built the town hall he had originally planned, along with a new hotel, several businesses, and homes for many of the newcomers. Abigail's school flourished, with a second teacher hired to accommodate the growing number of students. Clara started her formal education there at age 6, proving to be as bright and determined as both her parents. In 1881, they welcomed a son, Samuel James Westbrook, completing their family. Quincy added another room to their house and built a tree house in the large oak behind the property, a space that became Clara's favorite retreat as she grew older. Life wasn't always easy. They weathered economic downturns, periods of drought that threatened local ranchers, and the usual trials of family life. But through it all, they remained each other's strength and solace. On a warm evening in the summer of 1885, they sat on their porch swing watching their children play in the yard. Clara, now 8, was teaching 5-year-old Samuel a complicated clapping game, her patience remarkable as he struggled to keep up. 10 years, Abigail mused, leaning against Quincy's shoulder. "It's been 10 years since I came to Cottonwood Springs. Sometimes it feels like yesterday." "And sometimes it feels like you've always been here," he replied, his arm comfortably around her shoulders. "Like this town wasn't really complete until you arrived," she smiled at the sentiment. "Do you remember what the town looked like then, before all your buildings transformed it?" "I do. Dusty streets, haphazard construction, a place still figuring out what it wanted to be." He paused, watching the children. Much like I was still figuring out who I wanted to be. And who did you become? She asked, genuinely curious about how he saw himself after all these years. He considered the question seriously. A builder, yes, a husband and father, which matters most. But also, someone who stood up when it mattered. That day with you it changed me as much as it changed your path. Abigail reached for his hand, entwining their fingers. I've never properly thanked you for that day. You've thanked me every day since, he countered, by staying. By building this life with me, by giving me Clara and Samuel. They fell silent, content in each other's company as twilight deepened around them. In the yard, Clara had abandoned the clapping game and was now helping Samuel construct an imaginary fort from sticks and leaves. They're going to be filthy, Abigail observed without making any move to interrupt their play. Worth it, Quincy replied. Look at their faces. Indeed, both children wore expressions of pure joy and concentration, lost in their creative world. Clara had inherited her father's building instincts, always constructing something from whatever materials were at hand. Samuel showed signs of his mother's love of stories, already creating elaborate tales about the inhabitants of every structure his sister built. As darkness fell completely, Abigail reluctantly called the children inside for supper. After the meal, baths, and bedtime stories, she and Quincy returned to the porch, drawn by the perfect summer night. I've been thinking, Quincy said as they settled back onto the swing. Clara will be finishing at your school in a few years. Have you given any thought to what comes next for her education? Abigail nodded. I have. There's talk of a proper academy opening in Denver for girls who want more than basic schooling. Denver's a long way. It is. But she's bright, Quincy. Brighter than I was at her age. She deserves every opportunity. He sighed, acknowledging the truth of it. We have time yet to decide, and who knows what might be available closer to home in a few years. Always the builder, she teased gently. Already planning the next structure, always, he admitted. But not just buildings anymore. Planning future's possibilities. That's what we do now, isn't it? Build foundations for Clara and Samuel to stand on. The conversation drifted to other topics as the night deepened plans for expanding the garden, news of the widow Gray's declining health, speculation about whether the new doctor in town might have romantic intentions toward the young woman who ran the mercantile. Later, as they prepared for bed, Abigail paused at their bedroom window, looking out at the town that had become home. Lamplight glowed in scattered windows, and the silhouette of the schoolhouse stood proud against the starlit sky. I love you, Quincy Westbrook, she said, sensing him behind her before his arms encircled her waist. More than I ever thought possible when you first rescued me from the dust. He pressed a kiss to the curve of her neck. And I love you, Abigail Westbrook. More with each board I cut, each nail I drive, each day we build this life together. In that moment, Abigail knew with absolute certainty that the journey that had brought her west, however difficult and frightening it had seemed, had led her exactly where she was meant to be. In this town, this house, this man's arms, she had found not just safety or security, but a love strong enough to weather whatever the frontier might still bring their way. They had built it together, one day at a time, as surely and solidly as Quincy had built the floors beneath their feet and the roof above their heads. And like his finest craftsmanship, their love would endure, a legacy for their children and the generations to follow. In the years that came after, Cottonwood Springs would grow into a proper city. The schoolhouse would expand to become an educational center for the region. Clara would indeed attend that academy in Denver, returning with knowledge and ideas that would further transform her hometown. Samuel would follow in his father's footsteps, learning carpentry at Quincy's side before developing his own distinctive style. And through it all, Abigail and Quincy would remain at the heart of the community they had helped shape, she as educator and eventually school superintendent, he as master builder and town elder. Their story would become part of local lore, a testament to how love and determination could overcome the harshest beginnings. But on that summer night in 1885, All of that future still lay ahead, unwritten but full of promise. For now, they had each other, their children sleeping peacefully down the hall, and the home they had made together, each board cut, shaped, and placed with love, creating a foundation strong enough to support all their dreams.